Working in this environment right now, where you know from a supply side that pricing's under pressure, and that things are more competitive than ever. What sort of levers do commercial teams have at their disposal at the moment to try and optimize their business?
Well, we see a lot, in particularly in the sectors that I work in. Most of the businesses I work with buy from manufacturers and sell on, so they usually have procurement rebates and sale rebates. And in terms of the selling side, the key is usually targeted pricing. Often they'll end up negotiating a particular deal to achieve the sales. But that can be a bit clunky and a bit impractical. It's negotiate every single transaction, and that's as you said just now, some businesses would have been doing that, managing very tightly every single deal that they made. Bundling, we see a little bit more bundling in B2B now, packaging of products, range of projects to encourage a certain behavior. But I think still the majority are going back to rebates. And rebates, when you think about it, can be a great idea, because in reality, what they are is a conditional discount. I'll only give you this if you demonstrate these buying behaviors. So from a sales point of view, that's great, but you have to be careful of what behavior you encourage and what's the unintended consequences of the behavior you encourage. So if rebates are poorly thought out, and this I'm sure this theme will come up again and again through this conversation, poorly thought out rebates can be counterproductive. So my advice would be to anybody who's trying to think, well, how do I take this forward? How do I optimize? Is take a breath and completely review and rethink your rebates.
Yeah, it's a good recommendation, Barry. And Fiona, I'd imagine you'd echo that. And where do you think rebates fits in that toolbox of options that commercial teams have?
Yeah, so I think sometimes rebates are poorly understood. So from a rebate point of view, there are different ways you can use rebates. So you can use it to incentivize volume, and it encourages large orders, leading to economies of scale and better pricing for the manufacturer. However, you've got to be careful on how you structure that rebate, because you might find cash flow issues that happened right at the end of the term of the rebate, where a big order will come in just so that they can hit the rebate target. So as Barry says, you've got to see what behavior you're encouraging through rebates. You can have performance incentives that can be tied to sales targets and growth metrics, which is probably the better way of doing it. Product mix to promote sales of new products or higher margin products. Channel incentives, so you could use rebates to dictate where you want the product to be sold, whether it's online or whether it's in store. Or then end of life, you can use for end of life to try and clear the products that are reaching the end of life cycle, or a combination of them. So there's lots you can do with rebates. You just, as Barry says, you need to stop and think what behavior you're driving.
And of course, the consequence of all this is it all needs to be managed and monitored and tracked. So, the more complex you make it, the more targeted you can make the behavior, but then of course your admin burden goes up. So it's about what the consequences for yourself are as well as for your sales.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what both of you sort of talked about there is taking a sort of more strategic and planned approach to rebates as part of that pricing mix and as part of the sort of commercial off that you're doing there. One of the things that we obviously see at e-bate, because we are working with organizations who've recognized the importance of coming to us and saying, okay, how can we fix this, is going back to what I said earlier about the signs of stress that they talk about, how their rebate program is performing, and talking about how it could work better. So, Barry, so what some of the telltale signs that you might see within an organization that would say their rebate program isn't quite what it should be?
Well, the worst scenarios I've seen, simple ones are how much time and resource is going into managing and monitoring rebates, both on the procurement side and the sales side. But really badly is when you see situations where finance haven't accrued the right amount for the rebate when it's due, and that really negatively affects the result at the end of the accounting period. And I've seen that more times than I really care to remember. It's a fundamental schoolboy error, and it happens so often. It should never happen. But you know, finance accrue based on the briefing they're given by sales. They don't get kept up to date when things get changed, or they're not aware of changes, or the rebate agreement is poorly structured. So sales think the rebate is going to be, you know, X, but actually the customer comes back and says, well, actually, we've earned Y, which is 25% more. And that's a nasty shock. So it's usually, and as I said right at the very beginning, as part of my introduction, I work with businesses to help them get the fundamentals right and do them consistently well. And rebates is one of those things that if you don't do the fundamentals well consistently, it can cost you a lot of money.